Well, we're coming down to the bitter end, my friends, and that means that there's fantasy playoffs abound, and I was doing well this week until in my Packcast Patreon League, I lost by .2. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom Grossi, and today we'll be breaking down Week 15 fantasy studs and duds. But before we get to that, you're going to hear about this rant. So here's the thing. I was in 4 leagues this year. One was a money league with friends. Then there's like the personal league, which has like Papa Grossi in it. It has Jade in it. And I made it into the playoffs. I was able to scrape back in after going on a tremendous losing streak. I came in and I was able to knock off my first playoff opponent. And listen, after this, I'm in the championship if I win. That's great. That's wonderful. Then you have Packcast 2, which didn't have the playoffs this week, and I was able to pull off a win and sneak into the playoffs in that league. And I'm like, wow, this is so great. And so with the original Packcast league, I was doing well. Things were going so well. And then I lost 101.76 to 101.96. 2 yards. 2. And so, my season's over in that league, and I am not happy. But I still have 2 other leagues that I could potentially fail at, so it could always get worse. So let's break down some studs and duds this week. My number 1 stud of this week is going to be Seattle Seahawks running back Chris Carson. After Penny is unfortunately going to be on season-ending IR with an injury, he's been going up against the struggling Panthers and now is basically the premier back in the Seattle backfield. Obviously, they've been utilizing the run, and their offense is kind of revolving around the run. And that's why Sunday was such a problem against the Rams, that they couldn't get one going. And so I think that Chris Carson is primed to make a big impact in this game. And so, he's the must-start of the week. Then, number 2, I have the Patriots defense, who is back on this after taking a brief hiatus because, they actually played good teams. But don't worry, they're now playing the Cincinnati Bengals this week. And so they should be able to bounce back as a viable option for defenses. Considering it's the Bengals, I really shouldn't have to go into much more depth besides that. And number 3 is Arizona Cardinals QB, Kyler Murray. Obviously having a terrible game last week, throwing 3 interceptions. So that was just a whole bunch of poop. But going up against the Browns this week, the Browns obviously have been struggling. And I think the Cardinals is a pretty good matchup for them. He should be able to put up a bunch of points. So I think he's a relatively safe option for you this week. You have obviously the points he can gain on the ground and through the air. Then my sleeper of the week is Ryan Tannehill, the Titans QB, going up against the Texans. And the reason why I'm not having him as a stud is because I don't know what Texans team is going to show up. Is it going to be the Texans team that beat the Patriots? Or is it going to be the Texans team that was basically getting blown out for 3 quarters by the Broncos and then losing? I don't know. So Tannehill has been on a roll. Obviously, they're on a 4-game winning streak. And so I think, he's available in a bunch of leagues. If you have to pick someone and, maybe start him because your QB hasn't been doing diddly squat, maybe roll with Ryan Tannehill. And then going over to your duds, you have the first, Devontae Freeman. Yes, he's on there. He's been on there almost all year, but he's back on this list after last week. He did actually well. He did pretty decent. It's been the first time all season he's actually put up points, but he's going up against the 49ers, and while the 49ers were giving up 40-plus points to the Saints, the Falcons are not the Saints, and so I don't think you're going to have a full-blown shootout here, and I don't think that Devontae Freeman's going to be able to get a lot going, so I wouldn't feel too comfortable starting him. Then, number 2, I got Josh Allen, the Bills quarterback, going up against the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. The only reason I have him here is because the Steelers' defense really has been showing up as of late, and it's going to be a tough road game. I think it's a little too risky to start Josh Allen, especially as all of us are in the playoffs now. And so I just wouldn't feel comfortable starting him in this position. Then, finally, number 3, I got QB for the Denver Broncos, Drew Lock. Drew Lock, obviously coming out last week, having a great game against the Texans and did pretty well in his debut. But going against the Chiefs, this is a similar situation to Josh Allen, playing on the road in Arrowhead against a tough team whose defense has had a resurgence as of late. I wouldn't necessarily go with Drew Lock here because that's a whole lot of risk, and I don't think it's going to be a shootout either. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Hopefully you're doing better in your fantasy leagues. I'll let you know next week if I continue on to the championship for fantasy glory. But you can always find me at TomGrossiCompany.com or at TomGrossiCompany on all social media you see down below. Check out Patcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout out and thank you all the Patreon members over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.